Yeah. He's not even yours. What are you gonna do? Divorce me? Huh. As if. Will stain. I'm taking half, loser. That laugh. It carved itself into my bones like a knife against glass. My husband's smirk wasn't just cruel. It was triumphant, as if my pain was his prize. And in that instant something inside me died. Hi everyone. My name is Mara, I'm 31. And if you've ever had someone you trusted spit in your face with words instead of fists, you'll know why my silence that day was louder than any scream. I stood in the hospital room, the smell of disinfectant clinging to the walls, the soft weight of my newborn in my arms. My baby, my entire world. His tiny fists curled against my chest as if holding on to me was enough to keep the ground steady. But then the papers arrived and I saw the name. Not the one we'd whispered under stars at midnight. Not the one etched into the corners of my notebook during pregnancy. The name of her. His ex. The ghost he swore was buried. The betrayal wasn't just in the ink. It was in the casual shrug he gave, the way his lips twisted when I demanded an explanation. Like I was the punchline in his favorite joke. I felt the walls tilt. My heart didn't just break, it scattered. My mother's voice echoed in my head. If he ever shows you who he is, believe him. And there he was, showing me with every syllable that the life I thought I built was a stage, and I was the fool cast to play the role of wife. He leaned back in the chair, hands folded behind his head, grinning. Come on, Mara. Don't act so shocked. You're not going anywhere. You wouldn't dare. But here's the thing. Silence is not weakness. It's planning. And while he laughed, while he believed I was trapped, I was already writing my way out in invisible ink. That night as he snored beside me, I stared at the ceiling, my son's tiny breaths warming my neck. My mind didn't wander. It sharpened. A single thought took root, steady as steel. Test. Truth. Freedom. When morning came, I didn't argue. I didn't cry. I kissed my son's head, slipped my shoes on and walked into the storm with only one destination. The DNA clinic. Because sometimes revenge begins in whispers, not war. In my silence, it was the sound of his world unraveling before he even knew it. The waiting room smelled faintly of old coffee and stale paper. I sat with my son cradled against my chest, rocking him gently as if my heartbeat could mask the storm brewing inside me. The nurse called my name and every step down that corridor felt like walking through quicksand. The test itself was simple. A swab. A signature. A file tucked away. But my hands trembled, not from doubt, but from the weight of what this truth could do. I wasn't just swabbing my child's cheek. I was swabbing away the illusion of my marriage. Days turned into weeks. Every night I lay in bed, my husband beside me, blissfully unaware. He still laughed, still tossed careless insults my way, still texted late at night with the phone tilted just enough to block my view. I played the part. Quiet wife, weary eyes, heavy heart. But beneath it I was steel. Then came the envelope. Small. Filled. Heavy in ways no paper should ever be. My breath caught as I sliced it open, the sound crisp, final. And there was. Probability of paternity, 0%. The world slowed. My son's future, my dignity, my freedom, all inked on a white page. My heart raced, but I didn't cry. No, the tears had long since dried. What washed over me instead was clarity. That night he swaggered into the kitchen, beer in hand, bragging about some deal he was making, some fantasy life he thought we'd live. I studied his face, memorizing the arrogance carved into every smirk. I didn't tell him. Not yet. I tucked the paper into a folder, slipped it beneath my documents and kissed my son goodnight with steady lips. Because revenge doesn't come from rage. It comes from precision. And as the moonlight spilled across my living room floor, I whispered to myself, next step. Lawyer. He thought he owned me. He thought I'd never leave. But the truth was in my hands now, and the walls of his castle were made of sand. Soon the tide would rise. The law office was quiet, the kind of quiet that feels like judgment. Diplomas lined the walls in neat frames, and the leather chair beneath me squeaked when I shifted my weight. My lawyer, sharp eyes, calm voice, listened without interruption as I laid it all out. The name on the certificate, the laughter, the test, the truth. When I slid the folder across his desk, his fingers tapped the results like a drumbeat of confirmation. This, he said, changes everything. I leaned back, my son's photo tucked inside my purse, and breathed for what felt like the first time in months. I want out, I told him. And I don't want him walking away with a cent he doesn't deserve. The lawyer nodded, already scribbling notes. Custody. Assets. Strategy. Each word felt like a hammer striking the foundation of the prison I'd been living in. At home I wore a mask. He didn't notice the change, not in my eyes, not in the way my voice no longer shook. He ranted about bills, about how I should be grateful for the roof over my head, about sacrifices he claimed he made. All while his phone buzzed with messages he guarded like state secrets. I played my part. Dinner on the table. Nods in the right places. Silence where he expected it. But at night I hid documents in a box beneath my bed. Bank statements. Pay stubs. Records of every late-night withdrawal he thought I wouldn't notice. It was almost poetic, the way he mocked me, oblivious to the trap tightening around him. One evening, as he boasted about buying a car he couldn't afford, I excused myself and locked the bathroom door. My reflection stared back, pale, tired, but no longer broken. I pressed my hand against the cool glass and whispered, "Not much longer." Because the plan was in motion. Quietly, invisibly, each step drawing me closer to freedom. And when the storm hit, he wouldn't see it coming. The first box was small, tucked beneath the crib. I filled it with baby clothes, the ones he never noticed, the ones he'd never think to check. Each night after he fell asleep, I packed another corner of my life. Toothbrushes. Spare keys. My grandmother's locket. Quietly, carefully, like a thief in my own home. I wasn't rushing. No, revenge requires patience. Every step had to look ordinary. Every move disguised as routine. He thought I was still tethered, still his shadow. But I was already gone in my mind, and soon my body would follow. I kept a journal. Dates, times, his drunken rants, the bills he forgot to pay, the bruising words he hurled when he thought power came from volume. I snapped photos of receipts he left lying around, captured screenshots of texts that slipped onto the screen before he could hide them. Each piece of evidence slid into the folder like another nail in his coffin. One night as I folded laundry, he stepped into the doorway, eyes narrow. "You've been quiet lately," he said. I smiled faintly, holding up a shirt. "Just tired." His gaze lingered, suspicious, before he grunted and wandered off. My heart pounded, but my face remained stone. If he caught even a flicker of my plan, everything could collapse. Later I stood at the window, city lights flickering like stars. My son stirred in his sleep and I pressed a kiss to his forehead. "You'll never know this cage," I promised silently. "You'll only know freedom." Still, there was danger in the air. He was arrogant, yes, but not stupid. His instincts were starting to twitch, like a predator sensing prey slipping from its grasp. The lawyer's voice echoed in my head. "Move when you're ready, not when he suspects." And soon I'd have to choose the night. The night when silence would turn into escape. The storm broke on a Tuesday night. He came home earlier than usual, his footsteps uneven, his voice already thick with liquor. I was at the kitchen table, my son asleep in the next room, papers spread out like ordinary bills. But he saw them. Too many envelopes, too neatly arranged. "What's this?" he demanded, snatching a folder before I could move. His eyes darted across the page. Bank statements. Legal letters. The edge of the DNA report peeking like a secret waiting to scream. My chest tightened, but I didn't flinch. "Budgeting," I said softly. He slammed the folder onto the table. "Don't lie to me, Mara. You think I don't notice you sneaking around? You think you're clever." His laughter was sharp, bitter. "You're nothing without me." For a moment, silence filled the room, so heavy I could hear the hum of the refrigerator. My palms pressed flat against the table to keep them from shaking. I met his eyes. "Steady." Told. "Am I?" Something flickered in his expression. Doubt, maybe fear, but he covered it with a sneer. He leaned closer, his breath hot with alcohol. "You wouldn't last a week out there. No one wants a woman with baggage. No one wants a kid that isn't even yours." The words landed like stones, but instead of breaking me, they built a wall. He didn't know I already had the truth tucked away, guarded by my lawyer, sealed by law. He didn't know I'd already carved a life outside his grasp. I stood, my chair scraping softly against the tile. "Go to bed," I said. Not a plea. Not a request. A command. His face twisted, rage barely contained, but for the first time he backed away. Muttering, slamming the bedroom door. I sank into the chair, my body trembling only when I was alone. The folder was still on the table, half open like a warning flare. I gathered it quickly, tucking it into the hidden box under my son's crib. That night I barely slept. Because I knew, his suspicion wasn't a question anymore. It was war. The days that followed felt like living with a wolf pacing its cage. He was restless, volatile, snapping at shadows. His suspicion had bloomed into obsession. Checking my phone when I wasn't looking, rifling through drawers, questioning where I went and why I took so long. But I'd already shifted gears. The lawyer had the papers ready. My escape plan wasn't a dream anymore. It was a countdown. Each morning I tucked more essentials into the hidden box. Diapers. Passports. Cash I'd withdrawn in quiet increments, small enough he wouldn't notice. I rehearsed the steps in my head. Grab the box, grab my son out the door into the waiting cab I'd scheduled with a friend. Precision. No hesitation. One evening he cornered me in the hallway, his eyes bloodshot. "You're leaving, aren't you?" His voice cracked like glass. I froze, then shook my head slowly. "You're imagining things." But he didn't buy it. His laughter came out broken, sharp. "You think you can walk away? What? That kid isn't even yours. You'll have nothing." The venom in his words no longer stung. They revealed him for what he was. Desperate. I held his gaze, my silence steady. And in that silence he saw something that rattled him. Not fear. Not compliance. Resolve. That night I lay awake with my son curled against me, listening to the creak of his footsteps in the living room. He was unraveling. Every insult, every cruel smirk, every drunken rant. They weren't signs of strength. They were signs of a man already losing. The lawyer's final words echoed in my head. "When the time comes, don't hesitate. Go clean. Go fast. Go now." I closed my eyes and breathed in the soft scent of my child's hair. Tomorrow would be the day. And when dawn came I would not look back. The morning broke gray, heavy with rain. Perfect cover. My son stirred against my shoulder as I strapped him gently into his carrier. The hidden box was already packed, its corners biting into my palm as I lifted it from beneath the crib. My heart pounded, but my movements were calm, practiced. He was still asleep on the couch, an empty bottle at his feet, his chest rising and falling in drunken rhythm. For a moment I stood in the doorway watching him. The man I once loved, now a stranger I couldn't even pity. I slipped outside, every creak of the floorboards louder than thunder. The cab was waiting, engine humming low. As I buckled my son in, the driver glanced at me in the mirror. He didn't ask questions. Maybe he recognized the look in my eyes, the look of someone running for her life. By the time the building shrank in the distance, my phone buzzed. It was my lawyer. "The papers have been filed," he said. "He'll be served by tonight." I exhaled, my hands trembling as I pressed them to my lap. This wasn't just escape. This was war delivered in envelopes and signatures, not screams and fists. When the officer knocked that evening, he must have felt the ground vanish beneath him. Eviction notice. Custody filings. Proof of lies. Proof of fraud. The DNA report. Every piece of evidence I'd gathered was a stone in the avalanche burying him alive. I wasn't there to see it. I was miles away in a quiet apartment my lawyer had secured, the hum of the refrigerator replacing the chaos of his voice. My son slept soundly, his tiny chest rising with peace he'd never known before. I sat on the edge of the bed, the rain tapping gently against the window. For the first time in years I felt air fill my lungs without weight. But freedom isn't the end. Freedom is the beginning. And his downfall? That was only just starting. 6 months later I saw him again. He was sitting on the curb outside my new building, his head buried in his hands, rain soaking through a jacket that had lost its shape. The arrogance was gone. The smirk, the laugh, the swagger, gone. What remained was a hollow man, his shoulders shaking as strangers passed without a glance. "Mara," he croaked when he spotted me. His voice cracked, stripped of pride. "Please. I've got nothing. They took the house, the car. I don't even have a bed. I just need a chance. I just need you." I stood a few feet away, my son's small hand gripping mine, his eyes too young to understand but wide enough to sense the tension. The same man who once called me loser, who named my son after a ghost, who laughed while shredding my heart, now begging in the street. I felt no triumph. Just clarity. You already had chances, I said quietly. My words weren't sharp. They were steady, final. You burned them all. His lips trembled. Please. I'll change. I'll do anything. I crouched, adjusting my son's jacket, my hands calm. This is not about revenge anymore. It's about peace. And you don't belong in the world I built for us. For a moment, his sobs filled the silence between us. People walked around him like he was invisible. I turned, guiding my son toward the entrance. My chest felt lighter than it ever had. As the door closed behind us, I realized, justice isn't always fire and fury. Sometimes it's absence. Sometimes it's the space you leave when you finally walk away, and never look back. Upstairs, I pressed my forehead against the cool glass of my window, watching the rain wash the street clean. My son giggled softly in the background, his toys clattering on the floor. That sound, pure, untouched, was my real victory. I wasn't his fool anymore. I wasn't his prisoner. I was free. And freedom, I learned, is the most exquisite revenge of all.